did any of you see Strange World?
I did.
How bad was it?
So bad. So bad. I only watched it because I wanted to make a video about it. So, and sometimes I do feel like, oh, am I bringing a very pessimistic lens? Because it's like I'm intentional, I'm intending to make a video about it. But honestly, I tried to give it a fair shake, and it was not good. It was written very much with, as the drinker would say, the message.
Yeah. That was my understanding of it. And I also thought it looked kind of hideous. The animation style that's become very generic. And it's to a point now where if you take, for example, Lightyear and you take Strange World and you just copy and paste bits of those movies together and you show it to someone who doesn't know anything about those movies, they might think of it's just the same thing. That's how generic the animation style is and how plain and ugly. You compare that to something like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I thought had a beautiful animation style. And really put Disney to shame because they're coming out with their own remake of Pinocchio, which looks absolutely hideous.
Right.
Dude,
so the talent is there. They're just not at Disney. They're working at other places. So it's not a question. It's not a case of there aren't directors and there's not talent doing this or animators. I really feel sorry for the Disney animators because these are people who they are artists. They grew up dreaming about being animators and making cartoons in a time when those things were really good back in the day. And now they're sat in rooms making this Disney garbage. It must be really soul destroying for the artists that are forced to do this to make a living.
Yeah.
Imagine if Disney got a hold of AI animation as well.
Then, all of them are gone.
Now.
Yeah. And, with Strange World, so much of the thesis was like out with the old, in with the new perspective. So there's this, like, if you look at how people typically learn lessons in a story, it's this like transfer of knowledge between generations, right? The older generations have all this experience, the younger generation have a few fresh perspective, but this was a very much like the oldest generation needs to be basically educated by the youngest generation. We need to be looking to the youngest. So that was like the overall thesis. So everything kind of lends to that in particular.
Yeah, that's another running theme of I suppose what you would call the message, whereby the younger characters are more enlightened. It doesn't make any sense. Like, how can the younger be more enlightened than the old? But the idea is that the old belong to an archaic time. They have ossified beliefs that must be updated. And the young have been raised in this new, exciting time. And so they have a fresh perspective on the world. And we should embrace, I don't know, give votes to 12-year-olds and things like that.
Yeah.
It's whole, like, forget the past, kill it if you have to.
Exactly.
That's it. And it's just like this ridiculous idea of like the wisdom of youth. It's like, no.
Have you seen TikTok?
I'm not. It's like I'm not so old that I don't remember being young, and it's like I know. Even looking back, I was dumb as fuck back then. I'm still kind of dumb, but like even then, it's like you are full of like idealism and unformed beliefs that are not tempered by wisdom and experience. You need to learn from that. Like that experience is what molds you into a more rounded person. But it's like they don't want people to go through that. They just want them to have that like unfiltered, untempered belief in themselves. That is not what makes a person great, and it's not what leads to great things.
Are you sure though that what you don't really need is a 15, 16-year-old brat teenage girl telling you what you should and shouldn't think, and telling you that what have you done for me lately? You might have saved the world for me last year, but you're a loser
for sure
now.
For sure.
Really
like if I'm
girl to correct your life for you and set you on course.
If I'm dubious about like where I'm heading in life and stuff, like as a man who's almost 40 years old, like I definitely would go to a 16-year-old girl and say like, well, what should I be? Like, where should I be heading in life? What wisdom can you impart to me? Because clearly you have more experience of life than I do.
Ernest Standringer, at the end of the film, he's like, "Oh, my daughter helped me figure out that I should help people. Yay!" Like it was very clear she helped. Okay, she was very smart. And
She was
remember
so
that part in the
smart.
film where he's like, "Oh my God, we're stuck in the microverse, and we don't know what happened to our family. We don't even know the political situation. This is what's going on. We don't even know if we're safe." And then she's like, "Wow, all these excuses to avoid helping people, Dad."
Yeah, Dad, you should just help people. Like, imagine if they'd like been teleported into like 1930s Germany, and they're like, "Oh, this party that's just trying to like bring like socialism to the masses and like elevate the status of their country. We should help them, Dad. Like, what's your problem?" It's like, yeah, but okay, cool. Like, nothing bad can possibly come of this.
Cassie Lang founds the Gestapo.
Yeah, totally.
They should have just sent her
This
back
is
in time.
the dumb shit that they don't ever consider in these movies. It's just blindly help people. Don't even stop to think about what this could mean long term.
Yeah, they should just send her back in time and tell Hitler not to be a dick. Like, she should go to Hitler in like a beer hall in 1927 and say, "Hitler, don't be a dick."
Yeah, it's never too late to stop being a dick.
Yeah, and with that Shakespearean level inspiring monologue, Hitler will suddenly see the light and the world will, not have had to go through the worst nightmare of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Just if only she had spoken up and
Yeah,
people
if
would
only
have
she was there. But unfortunately, there were no 16-year-old girls in 1920s Germany. That's a modern invention.
Remember when movies like used to teach us like, hey, wisdom and experience has something to impart to the next generation.
Yeah.
You don't have to like follow everything they say, word for word or anything, but like, you can take some lessons from them, some experience from them, and carry that forward into your life. That's the whole idea of like generational wisdom. But now it's like, well, the young generation, they've got idealism on their side, so that's definitely the thing you should follow above anything else.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
It is. I mean, the original Lion King told that story so perfectly, right? Is that when he's obviously just a little kid and you don't expect him to know better when his entire universe is destroyed and he's cast out. And without that proper guidance from his father, he actually turns into this very hedonistic, living for the moment type of person. And then who encourages him to get on track and figure his life out is Nala, is the female influence of saying, hey, you need to grow the hell up and look at the world beyond your own daily needs and see that people need you. People need you to step up and own up to your responsibility. And he does that. And that's exactly, I mean, I know, Drinker, you talked about this in Peter Pan, right? And
I was going to bring this up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting idea of, I think the paradigm in previous generations was that, like, quite often women would be a maturing influence on men.
Yeah.
They were the ones that would say, like, well, you need to let go of, like, some of your childish fantasies of adventure and stuff, and like it's about like the day-to-day life of just getting by, and that was quite often a thing that female characters would excel at, because that was what they had to be grounded in, and that was the philosophical basis of Wendy versus the Lost Boys. She was a person who initially was reluctant to mature into adulthood, was hesitant about the responsibilities that came with that, but she was ready to take it on. And she ultimately encouraged the other Lost Boys to embrace that as well, because that's part of the reality of life. You grow up, you move to a different stage in life. You can't just be a kid forever.
Right.
You can't just do stupid childish things forever, and you have to move beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that role, that idea sits more naturally with female characters, because they mature quicker than boys anyway in life.
Yeah.
That's part of growing up.
But we have that built into our biology, right? At some point, it's very clear, every woman knows that moment where they suddenly actually mourn for the fact that they're not girls anymore. We have a very clear indication from our bodies that we are now women. And it's also like a lot of our temperament changes at that point. So like if you look at just the personality structure of a woman versus a girl versus a boy, we have the same amount of positive and negative emotion before puberty, and after puberty women have a lot of negative emotion. It just really spikes, and suddenly, so like you're, as a girl, you're like depressed all the time suddenly, and you're like, what the hell is happening? So you're forced to sort of deal with your own reality of growing up. And that's why women do mature sooner, and then encourage men to keep up, right? And a lot of that dating process is women harshly judging men and saying, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. It's a very harsh light that women put on men, saying you need to step up. And it's interesting because San Francisco, where I live, is, a lot of people call it Neverland, because it's a good place to come and not have to grow up, because there's always some opportunity to stay a lost boy if you're a man. You don't really need to date your way into that serious setting, right? You can make a lot of money here, not anymore, but you used to be able to make a lot of money here and just live a very hedonistic life and not have to grow up.
Well, I think, I mean, even I'm not so old that I don't remember like being in school and stuff, and like, yeah, you got to a certain age and like the girls, they just kind of changed, and like obviously they mature, they hit puberty and stuff perhaps a bit earlier than the boys do, and their whole attitude changes. And it's like you got that sense back then, like they've changed to a different level. They've become slightly different people. And that comes to you as well, but it takes a couple of years more before you really understand what that means. But like, yeah, right. That idea is kind of what the whole Peter Pan universe plays upon, like that boyish desire for adventure and stuff, and like not wanting to grow up. But like ultimately, it does come to every person, and like you're ultimately not going to live a fulfilled life if you deny the reality of your own life, if you deny the fact that you're growing older and you have to move to different stages. You can't be like 40 years old and still acting like you're 20 and still like going out and partying and just like being a kid essentially. Right. And so like perhaps that comes more to women earlier, but then like they draw guys into that, and like they learn it too,
But I think that's what I find weird about, even something like Dungeons and Dragons. I always say the opposite. Dungeons and Dragons, that like this over masculinization of women. And I think or even with Peter Pan, like the way women are being written, it's this desire not to be the responsible ones anymore. It's as if like we are being written that we want to be just as frivolous with our responsibilities as young boys or young girls can be. We too want to be young forever and like forever bachelors, and not have to have that nagging sense of like, is this really the right thing to do? And that's where all that movie making is headed, is like women can be just as responsible for their whole lives.
Well, I heard these interesting videos that like, there was one that came out recently where it was a woman who was like, I don't know, 36, 37, not old, but by any means, but like, no longer like a child either. And basically saying that she'd been in a relationship, she'd got divorced, and she'd done the math, and she realized like her chances of like meeting a new guy and settling down and like being able to start a family before she was, I guess, like before like she got into an age when it was going to become really difficult, were pretty slim. And that was her facing up to that reality of, oh my god, like I've wasted the time that I had available to me, and that time is running out very rapidly. That's quite a sobering thing, but I guess it's the reality of being, one, a human, but like two, especially a woman, where like maybe you don't have as much time as you might think. And you kind of have to settle into the plan that you have for your life.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, then you could wake up to that point where, oh my God, I'm 40 years old and I haven't found anyone and I'm not going to be able to have children now. I've missed my shot. That can happen.
Yeah.
But people are being sold a lie that they can just wait forever. Like they can just party and do whatever they want and not have to like think about any of that stuff. It does catch up on you. Unfortunately, it waits for no person, you know?
You saying men and women need a reboot?
I'm just saying. Biology doesn't care about your ideology.